welcome everyone to this session, to the Mark Scheme and Beyond. And we have with us Susan Holt, who is an English and drama teacher at the American International School in Hong Kong. And we were discussing before that Susan's actually quite new to Moodle, so very much looking for your perspective on it all. And I know you have Andrew there as well, and I know you guys do some amazing stuff at the school. So looking forward to spread to you, Susan.
Thank you, Shane. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome from Hong Kong. We're in the middle of a T3 here, Typhoon 3, but don't worry, we'll carry on. It's a bit cloudy. I hope it's sunny where you are. So I'm Susan Holt, and yeah, I'm presenting from American International School, Hong Kong. I have behind me somewhere Andrew Chu, who you may have been to his previous sessions here. So welcome. So today's session to the Mark Scheme and Beyond. So today I hope just to share with you how my work with Gradebook has developed this year and how I solved the big problem that I had with my marking and how that was reflected in Gradebook. So just a couple of slides, who I am. So I'm here at the American International School and I teach English and drama. I teach English to grade 12. So I teach AP Literature and Composition, as well as ENG4C, which is a British literature course, as well as drama. The work I'm going to share with you today is taken from the British literature course, but what you will see is that it can be applied to any subject. Okay, so that's just who I am. And yeah, I hope by the end of this session you'll have a greater understanding of what Gradebook can offer you in terms of the edit calculations, which is where the magic happens. Okay, just a quick poll then. How many of you are actually using Gradebook at the moment? Do you use Gradebook? Okay, thank you. So most of you are using Gradebook, and then I see 3 of you are not using Gradebook at the moment. So I'll talk through some of the things that I do with Gradebook and maybe encourage you to try. Okay, so just to give you a background then of the course that I've been looking at with the Gradebook, this is my ENG4C British Literature class. And as you can see, I have lots of topics as we go through the year, all the different texts that we study. And this will become important later when you see my Gradebook and how that is structured. So that's just what my course looks like. And then here, this is a mark scheme that I use for reading. I could only fit half of my mark scheme on the page, but essentially I have a mark scheme for reading, I have a mark scheme for writing, and a mark scheme for speaking and listening. This mark scheme here, because it's ENG4C, this is based on the Common Core state standards. I don't know if some of you are familiar with Common Core, but that's how our English program is run here at AIS. So I have this mark scheme then with marks out of 20 that I use with my students for any reading assignment that they complete for me, be it an essay or an oral commentary. This is the mark scheme. So the problem came in trimester 1 when I was asked for the trimester 1 grades, and when I shared my grades and put them into Gradebook, the scores that my students got from the essays, when they translated into a percentage, it wasn't high enough for a trimester 1 report card. This is how our grades are determined at AIS, and this was all very new to me back in the summer. You'll see we have the grade point average here, the all-important GPA at an American school, and the letter grade and the percentage. So the problem came when my scores for my reading, from a mark scheme out of 20, so if my students got 10 out of 20, 50% at the start of the year, you could see that they would actually, letter grade, be failing. That would be a U, because it was below 60%. So this obviously didn't make people happy around the school. Okay, my students were not happy, and my dean of students certainly wasn't happy. So I needed to find a solution. I didn't want to compromise the integrity of my mark scheme. I wanted to continue using the same mark scheme, but I somehow needed it to be articulated differently onto the report card. And also I was very aware that this needed to be a fluid process, because I wanted to build in a capacity for showing progression through the course. If you get 10 out of 20 for a reading assignment in August, by January, I would expect you to be getting, 12, 13, and then by March, I would hope you'd then be getting, say, 14, 15. Okay, so I needed to show that somehow on the report card. So this is where I sought the help of my expert here, Andrew Chu, who helped me with the maths. He showed me that the magic could work with edit calculation, and so he did some maths for me. What he did was he asked me, okay, what does a grade A look like in term 1? What does a grade A look like in term 2? And what does a grade A look like in term 3? Once we'd established that, Andrew then did some maths. I'll just bring him in now to explain how he did the maths for me, because I just work with words. I'm an English teacher.
Hello, can you all hear me? Okay, brilliant. So Sue's mark scheme was something actually, could you, Sue, maybe you might want to mute.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so Sue's mark scheme is something out of 20 in this case. And so when we went through the grading scheme, we started to look at the mark scheme. We started to look at what would be an A, a B, a C, a D, and so re-articulate. So a lot of the time, I think the difficulty is people, although they see it as percentages, and you can see percentages as 100% means you're finished, and 50% means you're only halfway there. Actually, in this case, what we're doing is the percentages carry different meanings. So, a 60% means that you're just passing the course. And when you change that to a D or a D minus or whatever it is in the report, that carries a particular meaning. And I think it was those meanings that parents and students really understand a little bit better. So all we did was we just had a look and said, I think it was it about a 14 or a 15 in trimester 1? So if you follow the blue line, so we said 14 was an A or 100%. And what we did is we just did a linear sort of a scaling back from that, and we put that in as the formula to calculate and re-articulate the grade in the grade book. And then so trimester 2, by the end of trimester 2, perhaps on the mark scheme, the students would be achieving a little bit better or a little bit more. So we sort of moved, we said, okay, they should be getting a 16 now is the equivalent of an A, and everything sort of shifting in a linear fashion. And then by trimester 3, and we're saying maybe an 18 or a 19 would be the equivalent of an A, or actually it was a little bit more than that, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So Susie, are you going to share the next bit?
Yes. If you have any questions about the maths, please type them into the chat window, and Andrew can answer those in the chat window for you. As I said before, and just to reiterate, these calculations and what we're about to show you can be applied to any mark scheme, to any course. It's just all about understanding. In the first point, I thought I had to start with numbers and maths, which terrified me. But Andrew actually said, well, no, what does an A grade look like in your subject in term 1? What does an A grade look like in term 2 and term 3? So once I could articulate that into words, he can then do the maths behind that. So yeah, if any questions, please just put them in the chat window. Okay, so what we did was, if you look at my grade book here, you'll see I've got my reading folder here, and you can see the reading assignments through the year. So the first one here, it just looks a bit funny here because that means it's a turnitin.com assignment, but it doesn't affect anything here. It just means I can check if they were cheating. Okay, what you'll see is that we have a Fellowship of the Ring essay, and you'll see there this student here scored a mark of 5, and that is out of 20. Okay, and you can see there that came out as a 25% on a raw score, which in terms of a trimester 1 report card is not good enough. So we created an extra assignment here called the AIS Fellowship Grade, AIS American International School. So now, with the edit calculation we put in the background and gradebook, we're now going to come out with a percentage here. So you can see that 5, after the calculation, came out at a 55%. Okay, still not great, still failing, but still much healthier than a 25%. So still with the same raw score, but actually that's now been recalculated to come out at 55%. Okay, this student made a lot of progress. Okay, you'll see then with their next assignment they got 17, which articulated as a raw score 85%, but in my new AIS score that actually became 100%. And then when we got to a Christmas Carol, you can see the student got 15 raw score, but AIS score, it then became 95% based on the graph. Okay, and again with Macbeth, by trimester 3, by this point, a 16 raw score now came out at a 90% AIS score. Okay, so how is that shown in the gradebook then? Well, firstly, this is what the students see, and this is really important, and this is what Andrew has really taught me with gradebook, is about looking at it from the student's perspective. What can they see? So even though we've done some calculations in the background, the students are still seeing their raw score. So we can still track progress very easily. Okay, so I don't track progress with the percentages. For simplicity's sake, I'm tracking it with the raw scores, seeing how those raw scores are improving through the year. And that's what the students can see. So we're still using the same mark scheme, T1, T2, T3, but it's just articulated differently for the AIS report card grade in the grade book. But we are still having the raw score for the students to see. So how can that work? How does that not affect the overall calculations for the grade? Well, if you look here, the Fellowship of the Ring, the raw score is actually worth a 0. So this is the mean, the weighted, is it simple weighted? Simple weighted.
This one we're using the weighted mean.
Weighted mean.
To aggregate.
Okay, so the weighted mean to aggregate. So this is 0 here for Fellowship of the Ring, but the AIS grade is now at a 1. Okay, and again you can see the raw scores are all worth 0, all weighted at 0, but the AIS, the re-articulated scores, are actually all worth 1. Okay, so how do we make gradebook do this for us then? How does the magic happen? So after I've put in the original raw scores into Fellowship of the Ring essay, I then create this new assignment called AIS Fellowship Grade. And then I come along here to the Edit button and I click Edit Calculation. edit calculation, and then what it will ask me to do is to create an ID number. So this is so that Gradebook, so Buzz Lightyear in the background, knows what you want to calculate. So I had to give names for these different grade items that I wanted to be put into the equation. So they've all been done here, as you can see. So for fellowship, there was an empty box next to fellowship grade, next to fellowship, the original raw score assignment, I called it fellowship. Okay, and with Beowulf, I called it Beowulf. Okay, and this is just so that the calculation gradebook knows what numbers to calculate. Okay, you're giving it an ID. And so then with that ID, so we called it fellowship, if you remember, from that box, we called it fellowship, we can then make the calculation. So this is Andrew's maths. So this is to do the equation, the calculation, to turn the raw score into our new AIS rearticulated report card friendly score. Okay, so here you can see the calculation, minimum for 100, so we don't go above the graph above 100, and you can see the calculation here was fellowship times 5 plus 30. Okay, so then that means that the AIS fellowship grade here will take the raw score, which is this here, the fellowship, it will times it by 5 and plus 30. And then you would click Save Changes. And that's where it would then appear. So our AIS fellowship grade now has that calculation behind it. Okay, and then, sorry, I didn't know how to rub out students' names. Please ignore the student names. And so then if you look in the gradebook, again, this is how it looks. So fellowship of the ring, the raw score, and then we have the AIS score. So you can just see there what those grades are looking like in T1. So a 9, for example, is coming out at 75%. Okay, and a 16, well, a 15 even is giving you 100%. 14 is giving you 100% in trimester 1. Okay. Then trimester 2, we're now reading Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and you can see again I've made an ID. I've called it Christmas to create my AIS Christmas Carol. So again, you can see the equation slightly changed here. So we times 5 plus 20. Okay. And then you can see by term 3, when we got onto Macbeth, we then have times 5 plus 10. So what this means is that Gradebook is actually allowing for progress through the year. And obviously it's more difficult to get a higher grade towards the end of the year because I'm hoping you've made that progress. So for me, what an A grade looks like in term 1 is different to what an A grade looks like in term 3. And now, through the magic of edit calculation, Gradebook, that can be shown on the report card. So there you can see by Christmas Carol and by Macbeth what those scores are looking like. So remember, the raw scores count for nothing in the Gradebook in terms of overall grade. It's actually cut using this grade here. I can share with you these all these mark schemes that I've used. And that's how my students felt. This can be used, as I said, for any subject. I use, it's a slightly more difficult formula I use for my AP Lit course, but it's the same concept. That idea of having a raw score in the Gradebook and creating an extra item with an edit calculation behind it to create a rearticulated AIS score for us. So I'll do the same with my AP Literature and Composition. Anybody out there who teaches AP Lit will know this is the mark scheme for an essay out of 9. Okay, and then again, you can see here, I won't share the calculation with you, but it's the same idea. You see a 4 in the first term, Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. gets you a B minus, whereas 4 by trimester 2 now only gets you a C. So it's allowing for that progress. You see a 7 in trimester 1 is getting you an A, whereas a 7 in trimester 2 is now getting you A minus. Okay, so it's kind of reflecting that progress that should be made through my course. Okay. So we even did it for multiple choice quizzes, and that was a more complex graph that we used for multiple choice quizzes, but we can share that calculation with you. So that was for our AP course out of 55. Again, Andrew created a graph behind, and our principal helped too, and created the graph, and then again we got a raw score and then a rearticulated AIS score. And there's my Dean of Students looking very happy after this working grade book. So this is a time where any questions, if you have any questions, please fire them to me. And your microphones can be on, or you can type in the chat room. But please fire away with any questions you may have or anything you'd like explaining the game.
I'd probably add in that, sorry, Andrew talking here, that the formula or calculations feature in the gradebook makes gradebook really flexible, and we've used it a number of times to calculate some fairly complicated things. And it's never really sort of, it's all about sort of articulating what teachers want. It's a form of feedback and a form of reporting. So we're trying to, as best as we can, articulate an accurate sort of feedback back to the student and to the learner.
Okay, so a question here. I miss how you made the tag, for example, how Christmas relates to the grade for the Christmas essay. Is that the ID number? So what it is, if we just go back. Here we go. So this is where we have to create an ID number in gradebook. So you click Edit Calculation here once you created that extra assignment. So click here to Edit Calculation. Okay, and then you'll be asked to create ID numbers. So just for the assignment that you want to put. So all you're doing is you're telling gradebook which raw score you want to use in this calculation. So for Christmas Carol essay, I wanted to use the Christmas Carol essay raw score here. So you can see I made the ID number, called number, it just means word, anything. So I called it Christmas. Okay, and then so in AIS, a Christmas Carol calculation, that's what is then put here. Okay, so gradebook is taking that Christmas, which is actually the raw score for the Christmas Carol essay. It's taking Christmas and then doing the calculation to that raw score. Does that help you, Anne? I hope so.
That's a good question.
Okay.
How hard do you find it to learn your way around the gradebook interface?
Gradebook is amazing in what it's capable of doing, but it did take a while just to learn okay, which view I needed. Do I need dual gradebook? Do I need user report, grader report, single view? It took me a while. It still does sometimes, just which view I need, but most things I do from dual gradebook. But yeah, it's like Andrew says to me as well. It's the reason why there are so many options is because gradebook is capable of doing so many things, and so it's just a question of learning to navigate through that. I don't know what half the stuff does, but the stuff that I do, I'm quite confident with now and happy that it's doing all the maths for me.
Yeah, Zoe was just asking about minimum. You get back to that graph.
Yes.
So the reason why we had to use minimum was so the reason why we had to use minimum was because you'll see the linear equation would take you above 100, which is that green line. So we take minimum, meaning that once the calculation goes above 100, you would then take the value of 100.
Any more questions? As I say, this can be, I'll just reiterate again, this can be used for any subject. It's not just an English thing. Any mark scheme, just ask yourself, what does a grade, a B grade, a C grade look like in term 1? What does it look like in term 2? What does it look like in term 3? And then let gradebook do all the tricky maths for you. You can also download these calculated grade, right?
Yeah, you can download any item in the gradebook, so it just becomes another grade item in the gradebook.
So yeah, and so that's why the raw score becomes weighted at 0, and the new re-articulated score after the maths, after the calculation, is weighted at 1. Student reactions. I think you saw the student reaction, Shane, because it was only after some painful discussions with the Dean of Students and my principal that we got to this stage, after the calculations were done. So the students can see as well, they understand that the raw score is not weighted. And I do explain that to them, that the raw score is not weighted. However, for the students, what's really good is that they're getting a grade that reflects where they should be in the course at a particular time, rather than being punished in term 1 for not having made the progress you hope to make through the year. So the students are happy with that. And also for me, maybe it's because I'm an examiner, but I'm a stickler for having the same mark scheme. For students being very familiar with the mark scheme from day 1 and how they can improve and get better. And so for me, so for the students, it's really good because we can continue to use the same mark scheme, the same raw score, and they can still see how they can make progress with their raw score, whereas gradebook's doing all the fancy stuff in the background for their report card. That's how the students feel now.
And students definitely understand the idea that you can progress and grow. And when they see that letter grade, A, B, C, or D in a trimester report, they really are comparing it against what they feel that they've achieved. So I think the smiley face in this case is because she feels that she's achieved her grade on her report is similar to what she expects to achieve. And I think it really encourages a growth mindset in the sense that even though I got, that kind of a grade for the first trimester, I know it's going to be harder and I know I have to grow for the next trimester.
Yep. Yep. Any more questions? In fact, we even did, maybe our next session, we could talk about, with my drama grades, we added a scale, didn't we?
Yeah.
But that's for another session. Okay. But it just shows you the possibilities of gradebook, being able to articulate grades how you want them to look like. Have other teachers use your ideas in gradebook setup? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe after today's sessions, they might, if they get to see this.
With you. I'm going to come and sit and say hi. Hi, everybody. We do use the calculator or the calculations feature in gradebook in a number of different areas, and it's really much more by department. So in English, they have those mark schemes, in particular this course. In maths, they have another way of doing things. So, for example, they have term 1 and trimester 1 and trimester 2 combined, and trimester 3. So either your whole year, at the end of the year, your whole year's grade can be based off of how you've done for the whole year, or in trimester 3, if you've done particularly well, because they do a lot of review in that one, if you've done better in trimester 3, then they'll take the best of those, they'll take the trimester 3 grade as the final grade. So we use, it depends on the department how they want to articulate, and what, depending on their scheme, their mark scheme, their way of calculating, their way of providing feedback to the students. So we do use calculations a lot in gradebook, and it's particularly difficult as well for when you have APs. So with the APs, they get a grade. There's a whole bunch of ways that gets calculated depending on the department and depending on the exam and the course, and then how that relates back. So an AP should be, it's sort of considered a university level or college level course. If our students are taking it in grade 11 and grade 12, then it wouldn't be so fair for them to get, the final AP grade is not what you would expect a grade 11 to come away with. So if they are, scraping by on the AP, you would also expect that at a grade 11 standard, you're probably doing okay because you're still growing towards that. So how do we realign that? And we do use a lot of calculations. That's where we've used a number of polynomials to actually fit it onto historic data and all of that. So it can get a bit complicated, but it does allow a great flexibility in what you can achieve with the gradebook.
Yep. Any more questions? Even I can use gradebook, and I'm not good with numbers.
I think it's worth mentioning that it makes it easy for you to use, for a teacher to use, the mark scheme, and you can just mark, say, out of 9 or out of 20 or whatever, and not have to worry once it's set up. So you just follow your mark scheme. You've done all your planning beforehand, so when you're actually in the thick of everything, it's easy.
Yeah. And then, if the assignments change, it's still the same mark scheme. It'll be the same next year. Yeah, the mark schemes are not going to change, so you only have to do it once.
Yep.
And then it's set up.
Yeah.
If anybody would like me, if there are any English teachers there that would like me to share those mark schemes, so I've got the Common Core mark scheme for reading and writing I can send, and for the AP we can share those.
We can put it on the course page here as well. So.
Great. Let me just quickly jump in here and just thank you for your time, Susan. Thank you for sharing your experience and how you worked through that. And I definitely think there is a lot to take away from that. So I think everyone here has appreciated it. So thank you for sharing that and for your time and presenting today.
Okay, Sam, thank you very much. Thank you.